Jeffrey Dahmer remains one of the most infamous serial killers in history. Known as the Milwaukee Cannibal or Milwaukee Monster, he was responsible for the murders of 17 young men and boys between 1978 and 1991. His crimes involved not only murder, but also sexual assault, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism. The horror of his actions and the failures of law enforcement in capturing him earlier make his story a chilling study in criminal psychology and justice system flaws. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. His childhood was marked by instability and neglect, as his parents' tumultuous marriage often left him feeling isolated. As a young boy, he developed an early fascination with dead animals, collecting roadkill and dissecting carcasses, a behavior that would later foreshadow his horrific crimes. Although Dahmer showed early signs of antisocial behavior, he was an otherwise quiet and unremarkable student. However, as he entered adolescence, he began to struggle with his sexuality and social isolation. He started drinking heavily in high school, which further alienated him from his peers. Dahmer committed his first murder in 1978, shortly after graduating high school. He picked up 18-year-old hitchhiker Stephen Hicks, lured him to his house with promises of alcohol, and then bludgeoned and strangled him to death. Dahmer later dismembered Hicks's body and dissolved parts of it in acid, a method he would refine in his later murders. Following this killing, Dahmer briefly attended Ohio State University but dropped out due to poor grades and alcohol abuse. He then enlisted in the U.S. Army but was discharged in 1981 due to his drinking problems. After his discharge, he drifted between different jobs, living mostly with his grandmother, who was unaware of his growing murderous tendencies. After nearly a decade without committing another known murder, Dahmer's killing spree resumed in 1987. While staying at a hotel, he murdered 25-year-old Stephen Tuomi. Over the next few years, his methods became more refined and his killings more frequent. He lured victims, mostly young gay men of color, to his apartment where he drugged, strangled, and dismembered them. Dahmer's depravity escalated as he experimented with necrophilia and cannibalism, often keeping body parts as trophies. He attempted crude lobotomies on some victims, injecting acid or boiling water into their brains in an attempt to create zombies who would remain under his control. His apartment at the Oxford Apartments in Milwaukee became a house of horrors, filled with preserved body parts, photographs of dismembered corpses, and a vat of acid used to dispose of remains. One of the most tragic aspects of Dahmer's case was the failure of law enforcement to stop him sooner. On multiple occasions, authorities had the opportunity to arrest him, but failed to recognize the severity of his crimes. The most glaring instance occurred in 1991, when 14-year-old Konorak Synthesomphone, a Laotian boy whom Dahmer had drugged and partially lobotomized, managed to escape his apartment. Bystanders called the police after finding the disoriented boy, but when officers arrived, Dahmer convinced them that Synthesomphone was his adult lover and that the situation was a domestic dispute. Ignoring the pleas of witnesses, the police returned the boy to Dahmer's apartment, where he was later killed. This critical mistake allowed Dahmer to continue his killing spree for several more months. Dahmer's reign of terror came to an end on July 22, 1991, when 32-year-old Tracy Edwards managed to escape from Dahmer's apartment and flagged down police. When officers arrived, they discovered photographs of dismembered bodies, severed heads in the refrigerator, and human remains throughout the apartment. The horror of the scene led to Dahmer's immediate arrest. In 1992, Dahmer was tried for 15 counts of murder. Despite overwhelming evidence, he initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. However, after a highly publicized trial, he was found legally sane and sentenced to 16 life terms in prison, amounting to over 900 years behind bars. During his incarceration, Dahmer reportedly found religion and expressed remorse for his crimes. He was frequently targeted by other inmates, and on November 28, 1994, he was beaten to death by fellow prisoner Christopher Scarver at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes left an indelible mark on American society. His case highlighted the vulnerabilities of marginalized communities and the failures of law enforcement in responding to crimes against LGBTQ+ individuals and people of color. His story has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and films, cementing his place in true crime history. Jeffrey Dahmer's gruesome murder spree remains one of the most disturbing chapters in criminal history. His ability to evade capture for so long, despite multiple red flags, showcases both his cunning and the systemic failures of the justice system. While his death in prison brought an end to his life, the impact of his crimes continues to be studied in the fields of criminal psychology and law enforcement. His case serves as a grim reminder of the horrors that can lurk beneath an unassuming facade.